Buying a house in France is a completely different experience than the United States. The rules are different, the timeline is different, the process is completely different. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could lose things on the deal.
By the end of this video, you'll know how to buy a house in France. At least we hope so. You'll know what roles each person plays, what your realtor plays. You'll even know what this thing called a notaire, not a notary, a notaire is in France, the ins and outs and the things you need to look out for. And you'll also learn the one rule that we wish we had been told before.
Hire a lawyer.
We bought a countryside villa in the heart of the Dordogne region of France. We made almost every mistake you could think you make without actually having something really go wrong, but we learned a lot, and we want to share that with you.
This is a video that when we were searching for homes, we couldn't find. So we made it. How much does a property cost in France, and how does this compare to the United States? A 2-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood in Los Angeles runs about 1.2 to 1.8 million. You can get a farmhouse with a gîte, outer houses, land, and a pool for a fraction of that. In Los Angeles, this never would have been obtainable.
Here is a general range of prices for homes in rural Southwest France. A home in a small village or even a hamlet will run about 80 to 150 euro. If you want something with a gîte, some land, we're talking up to 200, 300,000 euro. Then above that, if you want something that's stone, beautiful, old, has almost a history or even a story attached to it, you're looking at 500,000 to 800,000 euro. Now, don't get me wrong. This is rural Southwest France. Paris and the Côte d'Azur, which are more comparable to Los Angeles, or a metropolitan area in the United States.
But before you start searching listings, you need to understand who does what and how this process works, because it is very different than the United States.
Trust us.
We know. Real quick, there are a few terms that you need to know in French while going through this process. Alors, on commence avec le vocabulaire. Un notaire, une notaire, notaire, the notary, notaire, une agence immobilière, or you'll see signs that just say immobilier. That's a real estate agency. Une agente immobilière ou un agent immobilier, a real estate agent. Un avocat ou une avocate, a lawyer.
Don't mistake that for an avocado. They're the same word in French.
I hate my life!
What is a notaire, and why are they completely different from a notary back in the United States? What exactly do they do?
We had heard of a notaire before we started this process. But unlike in the US, where you would normally think of notary, which is just to kind of officially attest that they either see you signing a document or something like that. In France, a notaire is a state-appointed advocate for the state, specifically, and making sure that the transaction is legal and by the book. A notaire isn't there to protect you specifically, but just make sure the overall transaction goes the way it's supposed to.
The government can either assign you one or you find one yourself.
They authenticate the sale. They're the middleman for the funds. So you send your money to the notaire, who then makes sure the transaction is by the book, and then would release your funds to the seller. So as a buyer, you send it to the notaire, which we did. And trust me, that is a scary wire transfer to make if I've ever seen one. They also check everything you could think of about the house and the history of the house, making sure there's no debts or liens or any sort of thing that would complicate the sale. And they make sure the person selling it really owns the house. They essentially make sure everything is exactly how it's supposed to be for the sale to go legally and properly. The notaire does earn a fee, and that's 78% on the purchase price and is included in the taxes that go to the government.
Buyers pay this on top of the purchase. Now you can either use the seller's notaire or appoint your own. Make sure you appoint your own.
Now, the notaire is not the only person you deal with in a real estate transaction most of the time. You can do person-to-person sale, and you still have to have a notaire to authenticate it. But in our case, we reached out to a real estate agency to find a real estate agent to help with the process. We actually chose multiple agents, multiple agencies to try to find the best property for us.
How does working with a French real estate agency and agent work? Who are they working for, and what exactly are they doing during this process?
You also have to have a real estate agent. And this is where we need to have a real honest conversation with you and our experience. We worked with a real estate agency here in France. We actually worked with multiple agencies and multiple agents because we really wanted to source the home that we felt would be the right fit for us. They were helpful getting us into the houses to view them and to help us make the decision in that aspect. But when things got complicated, that's where we felt things weren't what they should be. This isn't unique to our experience, but there was this feeling that they were just trying to close the sale when it got to the point where things got complicated. In our situation, the house came partially furnished, which was wonderful, and we got some great furniture. That being said, some of the stuff that was provided as saying that would be included when we arrived on the last day to sign and get the keys, those items were missing. Quite a few items were missing.
Yeah.
To the point where it was shocking. Things that were included in this inventory were not in the final paperwork. We pushed back. Things got very tense. People mentioned legal action if we didn't sign that day, complicating the matter even more. And this is where we really didn't feel supported, and those that were supposed to be in our court didn't seem to be in our court. Part of the sale was that it was partially furnished, which also means that there's very strict what is included in the sale and should be in the home. Anything beyond that is essentially not for us to deal with. And unfortunately, our representative in the sale didn't tell us that this is how it goes. If there's stuff around the property, it shouldn't be there. And we could pause the sale until that's addressed. But we were not informed of this, and we had to deal with it after the matter. The real estate agent, like in the US, but a little bit different because it's declared right from the start and very clearly spelled out, they're paid a percentage, that amount is from the sale amount.
In France, immobilier fees are typically paid by the seller around 5 to 8%. The agent's financial interest is closing the sale. Now, if something goes wrong with the negotiation, they're not necessarily on your side. This is not cynical, it's just how the system works. And knowing that changes the deal.
Like with any transaction where a lot of money is involved, always ensure everything is in writing, everything. If a phone call occurs, make sure you recap it in an email or notes as a way to very clearly signify what was discussed in that call.
Do not rely on word of mouth. Send a recap email immediately after. Definitely do that because you want to protect yourself.
This is the most important single piece of advice that would have changed the entire experience for us.
So since we did not hire a lawyer, we reviewed all of the paperwork. Even our parents went through it. So 4 people looked at this paperwork and everyone thought this paperwork was right. Documents that were sent to us were formatted incorrectly and it was very confusing and made us misunderstand the sale. We didn't know what we were legally allowed to push back on. A real estate lawyer, also known as an avocat, would have reviewed those documents and caught everything. And having a real estate lawyer would have totally been worth the money. They're typically around $1,500 to $3,000.
In our situation, we did agree that hidden defects wouldn't be held against the seller. That isn't always the way it goes, but in these older homes, that is something that we do see, and we had heard from others, is included because it's such an old property and there may be stuff that nobody knows about. A French lawyer specializing in real estate law is different than a notaire. They work for you. They review contracts, advise you on what you're entitled to, flag any red flags in the contract, and make sure that there's no thing in the contract that come back to hurt you later on. They're especially valuable for foreigners because these transactions are different than what you might be used to in your home country, like for us, the US. Certain things that are an expectation just don't happen the same way here. In the US, during a sale, you would usually say, hey, this is X, Y, and Z is found to be wrong with the property. And you're very upfront about it so that way it can be negotiated in the price and the repairs if needed be. That isn't always the way it is in France. There are different parts of the entire sale transaction and process that are very different than what we're used to back home. Like the compris de vente, which would be a contract saying that you're interested in buying the property. That is usually when you put a deposit down that's non-refundable. In France, there is actually a withdrawal period from any major transaction. And this actually goes all the way down to things you buy at the store. They follow these rules very carefully. And that's why having an avocat would have helped us understand some of these nuances and also make sure it's clear to us what we should expect or shouldn't expect.
There can be inventory inclusions that are not obvious if you've never done this before.
In France, with the sale, the way you can conceptualize this is if it's not bolted down or affixed to the house, let's say when you turn the house upside down, whatever would fall out would not be considered to be part of the sale. Any of those items that fall out that you think you want would then need to be in this inventory that you negotiate during the sale. So for us, we had furniture that was part of the house that wasn't bolted down, that was included. But something like our oven or our dishwasher, which wouldn't fall out if you turn the house upside down, are included with the sale.
All right, let us walk you through the entire process from start to finish so you know what you're getting into.
Quick disclaimer, we're not lawyers, and we're not even professionals in this industry, but we are sharing our personal experience. So take that for what it is, but again, we'd always recommend you reach out to the proper legal channels for any of these questions. We're just trying to give you a little insight into our experience and where we had some pain points.
Exactly. We want to make sure that this is a smooth process for you and is actually very helpful.
We've broken this down into 6 steps for buying a property in France. Step 1, find the house. and set up a viewing. Work with a real estate agency. You can look on places like Bon Coin or Facebook Marketplace even.
In our case, I just Googled different real estate agencies, read reviews, and then cold emailed them and reached out to them. From there, we hopped on a phone call, discussed what we were looking for, and then set up the times when we were coming to France to look at the houses.
And unlike in the US where you have an agent and they can essentially go to the MLS and find any home that's on the market, or not yet, and get a viewing set up or sell you the house. In France, an immobilier agency will tend to have a book of clients or a book of homes that they're selling, and those are what they'll show you. This is why we keep saying, and we've said before, it's really important. If you're going to find a real estate agent in France, we'd recommend an American who understands this different type of real estate agency experience that we have back in the US versus that in France. To be honest, no one let us know that like, hey, these are only the homes they're going to show us because these are the only ones that are in their book of homes. We did find that out later. It would have been nice from the start to have kind of that pep talk about this is what to expect. Step 2, make an offer verbally, then written.
Step 3, le compromis de vente. Preliminary contract. So with the preliminary contract, you're going to pay 10% down. Once you do that, you have a 10-day cooling off period after signing.
Step 4, this is when you get to review your inspection reports and everything else that would be involved. Also, in our case, we asked for an additional inspection of some roofing because we were concerned there might be some issues with it.
Step 5, financing. Most French banks will not lend to foreigners, and if they do, you have to have proof of your income, tax returns, and a French bank account. However, you can pay in cash. You can also get a home loan from your native country. We know people that have used this method in other countries and then done that to pay for their home.
The key thing with any bank you go through is they're going to want collateral or some way to make sure that if you can't pay your mortgage, they can recoup it. So yes, we can finance through our US bank. That being said, there has to be enough assets on the state side that a whole foreign home purchase would not be an issue for the bank if for some reason you defaulted.
Step 6, the acte de vente. So as mentioned earlier, we have the compromis de vente, which is the preliminary contract. Now we're here at the final contract, which you will go in person to the notaire's office, review paperwork, and sign all the documents.
You can do this remotely depending on your notaire, as they do have systems in place for remote signatures, and essentially you give the notaire the power of attorney to sign on your behalf, which part of our sale, the compris de vente, was done via Zoom essentially.
If you can, do not sign remotely. We recommend going in person and doing a final walkthrough to make sure everything is to a T. And after that, the keys are yours.
And that brings us to our checklist. Everything that we just discussed in one place.
Here is the list of all the steps. Feel free to screenshot it or sign up for Andrew's free weekly newsletter where he will have more information on these steps. Or you can hit save and add this video to a playlist to come back and refer to it later. Again, make sure you keep everything in writing. Make sure you know who is doing what role and how this process is working, as we explained.
And we again would recommend hiring an American real estate agent that lives in France, that works in France.
If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe. We make several videos a month, and we will be doing future videos on all of these topics in greater detail. Go find that house. Immobilier, agent, avocat, Dylan.